Hey guys, it's great to be back with you here, picking up on the story. Now, it's been a minute since we've looked at the story, right? But for the past couple of weeks, playing the Wheel of Wackiness and having some good chats with Bex about anxiety, those have all been so amazing. But it's good to be back. So let's think back to where we left off. Do you remember? We heard from Wayne about how Moses and the Israelites were delivered from Egypt. Then remember how Wayne talked about how once the Israelites came out of slavery, all they could do was complain about where they were. Even though they were finally free, they just complained about their circumstances. Picture this. Right now we're dealing with COVID-19. And I don't know about you, but I miss a good, crisp high five. Now imagine I complain and complain and complain about not being able to give anyone a good high five for all of COVID. Then COVID's over, and I finally get to give high fives to everyone. I'm giving them left and right. That would be pretty cool, eh? Pretty good. Well, then imagine after a week of high five bliss, I say, man, people just aren't the same at giving high fives as they used to be. People need to get better at giving high fives. And I just keep going on and on about how people just need to be better and blah, blah, blah. But I definitely know that there's a few people in my life that would tell me, come on, Dan, like, relax. At least you get to give high fives. People are like, there's no more global pandemic. Come on. I know this is a kind of silly example, but this is what Moses was dealing with. Just a bunch of negative Nellies. Blah, 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 I'm hungry. Blah, 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 my feet hurt. Blah, 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 I'm tired. It was better in Egypt. And Moses is like, come on, guys. You were literally slaves. And all this complaining brings us to page 55 in the story, where we see the setup for a pretty epic moment in the biblical narrative. That is, God giving Moses the 10 Commandments. But before we get there, God has to let the Israelites know that he's speaking to Moses. So when Moses tells them something, they should listen, because it just might be a message from God. So the Israelites make a camp at the base of Mount Sinai, and they begin settling in and spend some time there. And I imagine the grumbling and complaining probably hasn't stopped. And have you guys ever experienced being in the car with your family and it just gets rowdy, or your sister starts complaining, or some kind of commotion is happening, and then your parent says something like along the lines of, if you don't work this out, I'm going to pull this car over. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. I like to think that's the card that Moses was pulling when they pulled over to set up camp at Mount Sinai. Moses is tired of all the complaining Israelites. So they set up camp, and this time Moses is like 80 years old. He's a pretty old guy, and he's got to be pretty tired from listening to the complaining and just walking. I mean, he's got to be exhausted. I kind of like to think that Moses just gets his tent set up, and then his sleeping bag all laid out, and he's absolutely exhausted. And right as he goes to lay down for a quick snooze, God goes, hey, Moses, I need to talk to you. And Moses goes, yeah, God, can we talk right here? And God says, no, not here. Climb the mountain, Moses. And Moses is like, I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to complain. So Moses heads up. And like I said, Moses is like 80 years old. And he's climbing a mountain on his own. This guy's intense. So in the past couple of years, I've run a couple marathons, and there's always these really old dudes that run the races. And honestly, some of them move better than the younger people. And I always go, man, I want to be like that when I'm like 70 and 80. And that's Moses, an old marathon runner dude, climbing the mountain on his own. That man's been eating his veggies. So Moses gets to the top of Mount Sinai. And this is important stuff. On page 59, God says this to Moses. He says, you yourselves have seen what I did in Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my command and my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. So Moses hiked back down the mountain and told the people what God had told him. And then the people go, yeah, sure. We'll for sure do what God says. So Moses goes, nice. And then he hikes back up the mountain and told God what they said. Then God says to Moses, that he will show up to everyone in a thick black cloud, so that all the people can hear me when I speak with you. Then God tells Moses to go prepare the people for God to arrive. To which Moses goes, nice, that's legit, God, and hikes back down the mountain to prepare for the people for God. So how does Moses prepare the people for God? Well, on page 60, we see that Moses instructs the people to wash their clothes, abstain from sexual relations, and any person or animal that lays a hand on the mountain will be put to death, so that on the third day, God can come to them. Now, these seem like some pretty strange rules to follow, but think of it like this. God wanted these people who were going to be his favored people to understand that they're going to be God's chosen people. It actually requires something of them. They can't just gain his favor and do nothing with it. So God made them prepare for him in ways that helped the people to anticipate something significant and something special. And God gave them rules to know that this significant thing was also very serious and a high honor. So that's why they were not supposed to touch the base of the mountain, and that's why they had to wash their clothes, and that's why they had to abstain from sexual relations, not because God thinks that they were dirty or doing something wrong or shouldn't touch the mountain for no reason at all, but because he wanted them to understand that what they were about to receive was God's favor, and that was to be taken very seriously and cherished as a gift. And God really wanted them to know that he was about to give them a gift, not a burden. You see, sometimes God asks things of us that don't seem to make any sense in the moment, but in the long run, they actually help us grow closer to God and help us become more and more like him. I'm going to be honest. Sometimes patience is not my reaction I want to give, but practicing patience, even when it's hard and doesn't make sense, is how we live the way that God intended for us. Thanks for sharing, guys. So the Israelite people prepare for God, following the rules that were laid out for them at that time. And as promised, on the third day, God ascended to the mountain. It says on page 60, on the morning of the third day, there was thunder and lightning with a thick cloud over the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast. Everyone in the camp trembled. Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet God. And they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke because the Lord descended on it in fire. As the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and the voice of God answered him. So then the Lord calls Moses back up the mountain. So there, old Moses goes back up the mountain, and he gets to the top, and God says, hey, you need to remind everyone to stay away from the mountain. And Moses replies, but God, people know to stay away from the mountain. We set up like a boundary around the base and everything. Like, they're good. I don't need to go back down there. And so God says, okay, then, well, go back down and bring your brother Aaron back up with you. So Moses went back down the mountain, did as God instructed, and went all the way back down and then came all the way back up. Moses really did just go up and down that mountain, eh? But here's what's the significant part about this moment. God is trying to communicate to Moses and the Israelite people that he is all in with them. But are the Israelites and Moses all in with God? Are these people really willing to just not touch a mountain for 3 days just because God told them? Is old Moses really willing to walk up and down the mountain so many times just to be obedient? And we can ask that question to ourselves. Am I really willing to do what it takes to be obedient to God today? Am I ready to do something for God, even if it seems to make no sense right now? I remember when I was in high school and my older brother and I were going on a trip to Haiti, and we were going to run some camps there, but it cost money for us to go. And my brother didn't quite have enough money to go, and time was running out for him to come up with the money. So we had sold some things and we had worked some jobs, and I had come up with the money, but my brother just didn't have enough cash. But he and I had been to Haiti before, and we knew that he had to go back again. But our due date for the money was approaching, and we were getting a little bit worried. And when my brother didn't have the money, I remember him saying that he literally had no other option except to trust God that he would provide, because he knew that God wanted him to go. So he just trusted and prayed that God would provide for him. And I'll always remember, one day after school, my brother came home with an envelope from an anonymous source full of cash that someone had slipped into his locker with enough money to cover the costs that he needed. Isn't that so cool? That God just provided for my brother like that. So guys, throughout the life of Jesus, We see him call people countless times with this one phrase, follow me. And I think that throughout our lives, we all have unique opportunities where God says those very words to us. And sometimes our circumstances are big, and sometimes they're small. But regardless, God is saying the same thing, follow me. John 12:26 says this, anyone who wants to serve me must follow me, because my servants must be where I am, and the Father will honor anyone who serves me. You know, I think the reason God didn't just provide the money up front for my brother was because God was asking my brother to follow him on a deeper level. I think the reason that Moses made so many trips up and down that mountain is because God was saying, Moses, follow me a little closer. Trust me. I think the reason that God told the Israelites not to touch the mountain was because he wanted them to follow him a little bit closer and listen to him. Listen, God put his favor on the Israelite people. He fought for them to have the best, and he does the same for you. Now here's the good news. The Israelites weren't perfect, and neither am I, and neither are you. But regardless of how much we get right or how much we get wrong, today, God is fighting for you because he wants you on his team. He actually thinks you're so awesome. He knows what you're good at, and he knows what you're bad at. He knows what makes you happy, and he knows what makes you sad. And he wants to be a part of all of it. He just says, come to me, trust me, listen to me, and follow me. Guys, before you go this week, I want you to talk in your small groups about how you think God might be asking you to follow him closer this week. Maybe he just wants you to wake up in the morning and before you grab your phone, just say, hey God, what do you have for me today? Or would you direct me today? Or could you just give me some joy today? Maybe ask God, what is distracting me from taking a deeper step with you, God? Remember, God thinks you're so awesome, and he loves you, and he wants to be on your team. Have a great week, guys. See you soon.